Did you hear of the investment advisor who is afraid of negative numbers? He'll stop at nothing to avoid them. All right, there are a lot of things that you can stop at nothing for, but today's topic is actually very important for Americans living in Israel. In fact, any American who lives outside the United States. I'd even argue that Americans living in the United States have to consider this, but that's not really the type of people that I work with. So if you are an American living in the U.S., feel free to listen. Mostly what I cover today will be relevant to you, but really I'm talking to people who live outside the U.S. The type of people that I normally talk to are Americans who have made aliyah, means they've moved to Israel, or they moved to Europe or some other country, mostly Israel for me because that's where I'm based. Even though I'm an American investment advisor, I work with people who now live outside the U.S. and have all sorts of sometimes unusual problems or different problems from what I saw when I worked in New York. The topic that I want to touch on today is going to be relevant to people who worked in a company in America, or maybe they worked in a synagogue and they have some sort of pension plan. They have a 401k or they have a 403b. Maybe they have some annuities. There are all sorts of programs that people have that are related to their work. And all of a sudden they move to Israel and they wonder, well, how do I manage that portfolio? So let's dive into that today. And we're going to discuss about the pros and cons of actually moving your pension plan into a US-based IRA account, an individual retirement account. An individual retirement account held through a brokerage firm works very much like a brokerage account, meaning in that account, you can buy stocks and bonds and mutual funds and index funds and CDs. There are a lot of different things you can buy. It feels a lot like a brokerage account, but it's wrapped in a shell called an IRA. And that gives you certain U.S. tax benefits that you probably don't want to give up on. So the first thing to think about is if you decide, wow, I'd really much prefer to have my money in an IRA, what are some of the issues that you're going to confront? The number one thing that I've found is that when people are working with pension companies in America and those people move to Israel, a lot of times that's like the only person they have in their plan, with 100 or 200 or 500 people who does not live in the United States. They just don't know how to deal with you. And they'll often say, oh, well, we're not licensed, so we can't give you access to the account, or that you better have a U.S. address, which is a problem because if you live outside the United States, you don't want to put a U.S. address on your documents because that can create other tax issues that you don't want to get into. And all of a sudden, you don't have really a lot of access. You can't call them. They won't give you advice. These are huge issues. And then what happens is you say, okay, I'll just take the money out, right? A lot of times people speak to an Israeli financial advisor who does not understand what's going on in these plans because he's an Israeli advisor. And he says, well, just take the money out and put it into Israel. We'll buy you a pension here. That's not the right term. I don't like that term. He means I'll sell you an insurance product called an annuity, which pays you every month, but it's not really a pension. And if you do that, you'll have a huge tax consequence that you do not want to have. So make sure that you're not taking advice from someone who has no experience in U.S. pension plans. As they always say, don't try this at home unless you're an expert in it. You need a little guidance to get this right. Okay, there are pros and cons of making this move, moving the money from an established pension plan that you had when you were working into an IRA. I think the main pros of having an IRA is you have control of the portfolio, right? It's like I said before, an IRA at a brokerage firm, it works like a brokerage account. Allows you, if you want to put all your money into bank deposits that are FDIC insured, no problem. If you want to put your money into a stock that you think is great or into a gold fund, you could do that. I'm not recommending anything here. I'm just saying they're all options. Another key benefit is when you move the money directly into an IRA called a rollover, you roll it over. The IRS doesn't care about that event. It's not a taxable event. The money continues to grow for you on a tax-deferred basis. And of course, it's very easy to access the funds. You just talk to me or whoever your advisor is, and he'll help you to get the money out. Whereas a lot of times when you're working with pension plans, the paperwork is a lot more onerous. And there's often, especially if you live outside of America, there's often no one there who's really going to help you out. There could be cons. I'll comment on these because I don't think they always apply. The fees might be higher. A lot of times the pension plans, because they're managing gazillions of dollars, they get better fees. On the other hand, the fees that you pay when you work with an individual advisor or you have your self-directed IRA can often be rather small. So put everything in perspective. I always tell people, don't worry about how much you're paying. look at how much you're getting for it. If you're paying and you're getting nothing, so then you're wasting your money. But if you're paying a fee and someone's helping you to manage it or to set it up for you or to make sure that it's all kosher money and you're not doing something wrong, there's a value to that. Another thing is, I've actually never personally dealt with this, but as far as regulatorily, a lot of times or sometimes the pension plans themselves can give you better protection in case someone's going to sue you and go after your money. And an IRA may have a different status. So if you're in a situation where there might be litigation against you, so make sure you speak to your financial advisor and perhaps a lawyer or accountant to see how this is going to apply to you. As far as the complexity goes, frankly, I think it's easier to have your money in an IRA, but sometimes people go, well, it's an IRA, what am I going to do? What do I know about that? It's so much easier. My boss, from 30 years ago when I lived in America, he handles it, right? Doesn't he handle it? It's easier for me. Let him take care of it. And really, there's no one watching out for you, and no one knows you. So whereas it's easy to do nothing because you're just doing nothing, it's not necessarily helping you. You need to think about who will manage the portfolio. Now, either you have to manage it yourself when you roll it into an IRA, or just like your brokerage account, work with a financial advisor or a financial planner who's licensed in America and wherever you live, and he'll be the one who's able to help you to manage the portfolio. Okay. Finding the right provider. It's very important that when you take your money out of the pension plan, out of the 401k, out of the 403b, speak to the company and say, listen, you need to know I live in Israel. Is that a problem, right? Because if they say, we didn't know, we didn't realize because you called our 800 number, we don't work with people outside the United States, don't work with them. There are lots of brokerage firms that do not work with people outside the United States. In fact, frankly, a very common source of business for me is I get a call from somebody who says, hey, Doug, I have an account at Morgan Stanley or Wells Fargo or Merrill Lynch and Raymond James, and they decided they'll no longer work with me. What can I do? Do I have to move all of my money? Do I have to sell everything and move it all to Israel? And the answer is no. You just need to work with a company that's an American company, an American brokerage firm that specializes in cross-border clients. If this is you, by the way, feel free to get in touch with me at goldsteinongelt.com at the Contact Us page. I'll be happy to tell you more about how we do this. Dealing with someone who's a cross-border expert is going to help you a lot to make sure you don't make the mistakes that so many people make. As you prepare, there's really 3 steps. 1, just evaluate. Look at what's in your plan, what's going on there. Does it make sense? You can get help from an expert to do that. Number 2, research who can help you out. Make sure you find where you can get a good IRA account, where they're going to give you the service, where the fees aren't crazy, and where you have access to all sorts of investments easily. And once you're happy, just go ahead and do it. And initiate the transfer. It's not a big deal. There's a little paperwork involved, but once you do it, you're done, and you can keep your IRA with your new firm, hopefully forever. Once the money's moved over, then make sure you're working well on the overall plan. Diversify the portfolio, keep an eye on it, and of course, optimize the fact that the money inside your IRA is not taxable in the U.S. So when you talk to your advisor, discuss, is it better for me to have investments that are more likely to have a capital gain or an interest payment or a dividend payment? It's a little beyond the discussion for today, but those are issues that you want to discuss in the portfolio to make sure you're really taking advantage of the fact that this portfolio can grow for you on a tax-deferred basis. It means you won't have to pay tax on a traditional IRA until you take the money out, and you don't have to start taking the money out of your own traditional IRA until you're 73 years old. That's a long time for a lot of people until they have to start taking required minimum distributions. Once you're 73, you're going to have to start taking out some money every year, but not all of it. We help clients with this. We help them to do the calculation, to know exactly how much money they have to take out. If you don't take out the right amount of money, then you are subject to a huge penalty, which you don't want to get involved in. So make sure whoever is going to be working with this is able to work with you now that you live overseas. I discussed a lot of things that do have tax consequences here, and we spoke about investments. I'm obviously not giving you any specific investment advice here. I'm not telling you anything about your specific tax situation. In fact, I don't give tax advice. I only give investment advice. But a lot of Americans who move overseas are dealing with this kind of issue. And if this is you, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. And if you have any questions, or if this is your situation, be sure you speak to someone who really has experience in dealing with cross-border clients. Thanks so much to my chief engineer, Steve Stewart, to my producer, Joseph Goldstein, to my website designer, Batsheva Goldstein, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I'm Doug Goldstein, the host of the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show for people living in Israel. See you next time.